well, for starters, it's knight c4, but I was going to say it's just the e4 pawn drops. So this is just all sorts of terrible after I move on knight c4, getting the b2 pawn. And, well, b3, I mean, Grishuk leans in kind of like, uh-oh, like, how do I deal with this? You really don't want to open the b file, but you also don't want to open the c file.
And unfortunately, you have to make some move, because if you just don't push either pawn, then black can take and open up the king side. I guess if it was black's turn to move here, what would you say the immediate threat is?
Some kind of take on c or a2, then play knight a4, just throw my piece at your king.
So just open up the b file as fast as possible and bring in your knight. That makes a lot of sense here. Grishuk getting pretty low on the clock, 2 minutes and a half here.
You might go knight c3 or something, just like...
Yeah.
The good thing with knight c3, it stops knight a4, which is always an annoying move. You take, I take with my king. It looks a bit open, but hard to actually get at. So it takes. It took a second time.
Chat, don't worry about the small stream interruption. Grishuk's light was just taking too much power, so we had to shut down and reboot for a second. We'll see if that power is enough for him to come back from this position.
So he goes knight to d5. The pawn was pinned. Don't blunder your queen. Good advice, right?
Yeah. Some I could probably follow. Is rook takes h5 a threat here? That looks like a fun move.
We both had the same exact reaction. Like, wait a sec. There's going to be some sacrifices. Watch out for queen c2.
Yeah, so let's take care of that first, because rook takes h5 is still a sack.
I mean, this kind of thing looks brutal. You're throwing queen h8 mate. If you steal the pawn, I check you, and then bring my rook into the game, and I'm going to mate you on h8 anyway. The knight, just such a good defender.
Yeah, there's no immediate threat. Is there anything black can do to just stop h5?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Yeah, I was going to say, if queen h5 is the option.
That's the move I put, said, because you want to get two moves and take this knight and get your queen. This is all going to happen.
He is so sneaky. That is why we lost power. His brain overloaded. He found a solution here. Ting, ting, ting. That's the sound effect that we got.
Is that how that sounds?
I'm pretty sure that's what the inside of his brain sounds like. Yeah, 100% legitimacy there. But this was a beautiful game. Are we calling it over? Or is any last hopes? What if black doesn't take the rook? Say king takes g7. Well, then you have queen f6. Yeah. Oh man, tough times in the office for Mr. Hellers.
I mean, this game is amazing, but there's another amazing game going on. So I think we should go back and forth between them. We have the game between Basem Amin and Alireza Firouzja. Check this out. Just a couple of moves ago here, like this h4 play went g5, which tries to open up this king. And after giving up the pawn, he said, I'm going to go mate your king. And queen takes g5. Watch out. Check. In comes the queen, throwing h5 ideas. Takes the pawn. Now h5 is a mate. King lost his escape square. Goes h5 check. And queen a2. Does this actually save the day? Like pieces all sorts of tied down to each other. I have a hard time imagining the survival. Bishop takes d3. Is that a queen c8? Don't blunder like me.
No.
Don't do me. Because here, check. Here is mate in return.
We got one sneaky tactic.
Maybe king h7 just to avoid it all.
That makes sense. And then if queen c8, at least you have queen d1.
Yeah.
Or queen f2.
Yeah, both are mate. So, because I wanted you to take back, so I have queen f2 checkmate, of course. But yeah, king h7, just avoiding all these checks should be enough.
Yeah, seems like a safe way to get out of it. Luckily for Firouzja, he has almost 5 minutes on the clock, so he can take his time to think here.
Yep. And is there any way that somehow white can survive? I'm not seeing it here. I guess if king h7, you queen a2 back. This would be a weird draw.
That would be a very weird draw. But don't you have queen? Oh yeah, you don't want to play queen d1 because the queen is still blocking. But you can play.
And maybe queen b1, just get after this. Yeah, it looks.
But no, it seems like you must have some type of better win earlier on.
Because like somehow like white is not dead lost yet. And I
mean,
know
you do have the passed a pawn.
But then you're like king g2 and watch out for checkmate again.
Right. No reason to give white any chances here.
The king h7. Okay.
Oh.
Well, the pawn is hanging right
there. So
the a pawn.
Grab it. All right.
Is the a pawn decisive? It looks pretty decisive.
Yeah, now that the queen doesn't have any more perpetual checks, looks pretty good.
How can white do so? F6, a4, bishop h3 here, like some kind of check. Get super desperate here. The point is after king h here, I have bishop e6. Gosh, I love tactics. You take, I go f7, and you can't stop me from
Okay,
queening.
your eyes are glowing. You're having a great time. I love it.
I'm just having a ball.
It seems like the line that actually got played on the board was not as ideal as yours. White has no passed pawns. Black has 3. Simple math there. It seems like Firouzja is just gonna quickly swindle this one. Although he still has to be careful to not let white promote the pawn, but black can always play bishop b5 and take control of the e8 square, something like f takes, bishop b5.
Yeah, always got that as a recovery. But then this bishop gets in, so we'll leave these players on camera, but I just want to pull up a position that's already over. We have the worst position I've seen.
Oh my god! What the heck happened here?
So not only is white up a piece in this final position, but I think I could give you a rook and still be like, it's one of the worst positions you've ever seen, right? Yeah.
I couldn't help laughing out of pity for black's pieces.
This is how this all happened. Like you went bishop.
This is the kind of position where if you're playing in a classical game, you're reconsidering your life choices and going through like a really terrible loop because you're forced to grind out this pain. You
need a different profession after this game, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna tune away from that. We're gonna go back to this game where king h4 was played by Bassem because if you take on f5, b1 comes with the check and you don't get a queen yet. So it was king h4. Saying, wait a sec, if you get a queen, now I get a queen, and whose queen is happier? Well, I'm up 3 pawns as black, but whose king is safer? I mean, black's king still looks plenty safe for the time being, but bishop d7 played, check, and
it does seem a little safer to just remove any type of counterplay. But the white bishop's doing a good job at holding b1.
Yeah,
right. Bishop e3, okay, and we still have the other a pawn. So if the a pawn is going to a1, please tell me what you're going to do to stop it because I don't see.
Put my bishop there.
And then we could play bishop f. We can't play bishop 5 because our bishop has to hold it. Ooh, okay. Well, you did show that move.
So Grishuk
you
won.
Play d3 though.
Giri won. We saw that. Niels Grandilis won for Sweden. So if Alireza wins this, then Sweden lost 3-1 again in the round. But right now, if this is some kind of fortress, it's really magical.
if Bassem Amin manages to hold a draw here, oof. Okay, so white king can't take on e3 because we're going to promote to queen.
This is
nice.
The way to do it.
He does it with check. Well,
yep.
Chessbrahs win again, 3-1.
Bishop c2 met by b1 equals queen. That is a pinned bishop, and so that's winning. And a nice win for Alireza Firouzja. I mean, the end of this is clearly very one-sided, and he's been pressing for a long time. Another 3-1 round for the Chessbrahs. So my prediction of 11-5. What do you think about that now?
I mean, it's still a bold prediction, but from the current score, seems like possibility. We'll be back after the break. You guys can let us know if you have any predictions, and we'll see you guys soon.
the chess capital of Europe. Meet and greet and simul with Magnus Carlsen. It's the Pro Chess League Finals at ChessParty 2020. Caruana, So, Botez, Hammer, Rudolph, Chessbrahs, an open Fisher Random chess tournament. Will you be part of the world's biggest chess party?
ChessParty continues, this time with some answers to our daily question, which was, what will be the most surprising result during the playoffs? We start off with Ashutosh Ghosh saying, if St. Louis Archbishops lose in the first round and Fabi loses 2 back-to-back games. Okay.
That would be very surprising and also very unlikely. We also have Heavy Metal Con who said, bold prediction, Chessbrahs win it all.
It's not bold, it's just capitalized. Just for the record. I mean, I've done a lot of writing in my day.
Wow, Robert.
Sorry, I had to go with that one. Anyway, Dr. Chess Gremlin says, the most surprising result would be Amon Hamilton taking over on board 1, drawing Caruana into tie breaks, and settling it all with a dance battle.
Well, his chicken dance would be pretty hard to beat. But you know what? Maybe Caruana would surprise us.
Honestly, I felt like crickets should be the response to that one. But no, the Chessbrahs legitimately have a great chance, especially now that Alexandra Grishuk is a local player because he's played 28 games of the regular season. That allows him to have the three-headed monster of Grishuk, Firouzja, and Giri. The only team that can really compete with that seems to me to be St. Louis or India if they have Mamedyarov, Hare Krishna. Well, Hare Krishna in better form than today.
Right.
And
Yeah. Although even Mamedyarov hasn't been having the best Pro Chess League. I mean, St. Louis still seems like the pretty heavy favorite, so it is somewhat of a bold prediction. But good to hear from you guys.
That seemed like a quoted prediction.
Oh, no more. I quit Chess.com. It's over.
Well, you know it's not over, this match, yet, because there's still 2 rounds to go. We'll get the games going underway in just a second here. But on a serious note, I mean, we look at the playoffs picture, we look at the Chessbrahs, they really do have a chance. But St. Louis Archbishops, I think, are pretty much everyone's favorite. Right?
For a lot of people, yeah.
Oh, you see?
Not for me. Sorry, I'm unbiased because I'm a commentator.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean favorite in terms of like like them the best.
No, I understand. Favorites in terms of who people are predicting to win. Yeah, no, I understand.
But you're still not predicting them.
No, you're right. They are the heavy favorites. Sorry, I had a brain fart for a second.
I just thought, wow, you're being like so just like you're being like just right down the middle. No input on like no preferences. I respect that, honestly.
Thank you. I was like, just so focused on trying to fix the mic situation that I saw a few people bring up in chat. Yeah, Alex is so smooth. But you know what is smooth? Robert Hess. And that's why he just makes up for my rough around the edges personality style.
I don't think you have a very rough around the edges personality. I think you're fun. People enjoy your commentary, enjoy your streams. Now I'm just getting all sappy and complimentary. So I'm going to go back to the chess before we let everyone know that we really are friends. Not just
we are?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go in here. We got
chess. Niels Grandilas, white pieces. Alexander Grishuk, black pieces. That's all I got for you.
All right. Well, so we got a 8-5 just played by Alexander Grishuk. He really likes these Indian style position setups. A5 right away. That's a pretty aggressive move, and it's also a very committal move. So he's controlling the b4 square. Do you think he wants to put his knight there?
I think he didn't want white to play b4 as a large reason why he did it, because if we just go back a second, white going b4 is a nice expansion. Maybe there's b5 opportunities. So he played a5 to stop it, and here comes 8. They always say, play h4 against the fianchetto.
Yeah, you said that earlier today. And now the more you say it, the more I'm going to remember it. Sounds like a good teacher using rhymes to help you remember things. H6 is controlling the. Whoa. Okay. I thought the pawns are supposed to be on the 7th rank when you're trying to castle, not on the 6th. But clearly there's some new opening theory that I haven't learned about. This doesn't look great.
Looks pretty awkward. I'm going to be honest with you. The one thing that Black has going for him, well, is that he can develop, and he's not really at risk of getting crushed anytime soon. But I mean, this kind of set up with the 3 pawns in the 6th rank. There's another pawn on g7 that's not doing much of anything just yet. I do think that at the current moment it looks terrible for Black, but what's White's plan? So if I asked you, we both agree that it looks awkward for Black, but what would you say White's next few moves are going to be?
Well, White still needs to finish development, so potentially something like bishop g2.
Yep.
And then what he could try doing is delaying his castle, going for something like h5, trying to poke some holes in Black's kingside. Then you have g5, and if Black is also able to get f5, then I'm starting to wonder who is attacking who here. So I guess that's the difficulty. White can't play anything like e4, because then he's going to block up his bishop. The pawn on d3 is all of a sudden weak. But he could continue with bishop g2 and just say, hey, if you ever push your f-pawn, then you're also creating weaknesses on e5. Your bishop on g7 looks like, just a really oversized pawn. So it's, I think, a tricky position for both sides, but you're right that the plan for White is not necessarily so straightforward.
Yeah, and even here, like knight d5 comes in. At some point, Black will play a4, break open the queen side. What was the point of playing a5? Well, you stop b4. Now that you have all your pieces aiming at that square, perhaps it's something to break open the queen side, and the White king is still in the center. So Grishuk's position, I'd say, looks worse than it is. In fact, I think that it's okay. Is there going to be a pawn captured on a5? Looks possible if you leave it there for too long, but I would even consider knight d5 here.
Give up the pawn straight up?
Yeah, because if you take on c3 and take on c6 and attack your queen. So if you take on a5, takes, here comes b6, you retreat your bishop somewhere, and then I take on c3, and I like having the 2 bishops.
Yeah.
You know this about me. I'm a fan.
It's definitely something I've taken note of.
But I can go f5, I can go bishop b7. Like my bishops will be great in a position like that.
Yeah, this is a position where being down a pawn isn't too risky. I mean, White has no serious pass pawns, not a lot of space. So it is a way for Black to be able to gain development very quickly.
Can we just talk about Neil's going to do this for a second? He's scaring me.
Somebody let him out of the closet. He's claustrophobic. This looks like a horror movie.
He looks like, he's in some like animated horror film. So got Tim Burton.
He looks like one of the guys from Death Note who always stays like this, or that he got hypnotized by staring at Alexandra Grishuk's very bright camera for too long. Not sure.
Although if you look at their backgrounds, it kind of looks like they're playing in the same place.
Grishuk trapped him.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy right there. So we do see one light above him, and it looks like one of those lights where you pull a switch, like a lamp. So let's move on before we get even more distracted than we already are.
If there was some like dun 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 music with getting closer and closer to Niels Grandelian's face, I think that could just be the trailer for a scary movie.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but the song "Say My Name," right?
Say My Name, yeah.
But Beyonce, but then there's a movie by Jordan Peele, the Candyman movie, that it's a horror film, and so I feel like we're just in that vibe right now. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. Move on.
All right, so it seems like both sides are making progress here. Neither decided to push the pawns too far, so we didn't see, h5 played by White. We didn't see f5 played by Black here. It's still a pretty solid position for both. We'll come back to it because we have some other games that are moving a little more quickly.
Yeah, we have the Firouzja game against Nikita Meshkov's, which is, we've seen some trades, 2 minor pieces, a queen and 2 rooks per side. And at first glance to me, it looks like Black is very solid. I guess what Firouzja is hoping for is that his bishop will outclass the knight. I don't know. What do you make of? Wait a second. Was queen takes a7 a move? Just bear with me for a second.
Okay. And if we take the bishop, then you take on b8. So if we take on b1, And then take bishop.
Then I was going to do this to you.
And I'm going to take a move back.
I think actually the reason why this is bad for white is because you just moved this rook away. The queen is now under attack, and now the bishop really is hanging.
Okay, so
that's a
just
fun line.
If you go for these are always the hardest part of the tactic to see when it's not the, obvious take a piece calculation line, but when it's a quiet move that just avoids the threat.
So he played bishop c5 instead, renewing the threat of queen takes a7. So I like it.
He has the bishop pair. I know you're a fan of that as well. His rooks are more active. The rook on e8 does not have a lot of space. Other than that, it's pretty equal. So it seems like white has a slight edge in the position.
Yes. I agree with that because the knight on d5 looks great, but at some point it might move and the bishop can always capture it. I just don't think white has anything to worry about. I'm not saying black is in rough shape either, but I do slightly prefer white's position, though. I think Meshkov is solid.
He's also taking a ton of time, so he has about half the time that Firouzja does, which is pretty important in rapid games like these because it means that, Firouzja is able to continue having a slightly better position, while black is going to be more likely to blunder later on.
And that's what we saw in the first game, right?
Exactly.
We're talking about Niels Grandelius having a very solid position, looked like an end game that should have been held, and then all of a sudden he has 12 seconds left and is losing a pawn and then picking a pawn in a game. So h5 played by Meshkov's here. You're still kind of like poking and prodding for positioning here.
Mm-hmm.
And h4 is an annoying threat because if black plays h4, there might be the threat of h3. And what white doesn't really want is say, like, make some random move. Rook b3, h4, h3, like giving all these dark squares. I know you have a dark square bishop, but my knight feels much happier getting into a square like f4. And long term, if I trade bishops and I can keep my knight on some kind of useful light square, that's where a knight dominates a bishop. Bishop can only stay on its own color, so the bishop on c5 has the dark squares under control. But if there are some light square weaknesses, you're going to have issue with the position when I have a knight and you just have a dark square bishop.
So then in terms of white trying to keep his advantage here, there are some lines that seem like he can win a pawn on the queen side. Is there anything you think you should go for?
Well, I wouldn't. So if you take queen a7, I was thinking rook a8 traps the queen. But then all of a sudden there's bishop b5, which no longer traps the queen. In fact, looks good for white because this queen is under attack. You take my queen, I take yours, and your knight on d5 is under attack. So lots of hanging pieces here. And he took on g6 first and then took on a7 because now the queen can't even pretend to be trapped as the queen no longer is in c6 protecting a8.
The pawn on c2 is hanging, but so is the rook on b8. So it seems like he just found a material advantage that he could go for, but it's a bigger one than it seems like. He's just up a pawn, but he has a passed a pawn, so that is going to start getting really dangerous. I think the best hope black has is he can create some type of counterplay on the king side, trying to get his rook onto e2. Although, even after a move like this, I guess we could play bishop f2. And it seems a little passive, so maybe that's not ideal. Rook g1. That's
speaking of getting passive.
Yep. He is getting a little bit passive here.
Just got to watch out for this. So that wasn't possible a move ago because queen a8 check takes, you blunder checkmate. So don't get checkmated. But now that you've protected the mate, there is going to be a queen a8 takes d5 threat. And unfortunately, your knight can't get into either f4 e3 because if it goes to e3, I take it. Goes f4, well, I'll gladly take that one for free.
Maybe just king h7 here, get rid of the check so that if the queen moves to a8 still, then at least you have knight f4.
Mm-hmm.
Or c6. That's nice, protecting the knight.
Yep, protecting and also closing off any diagonal work. So c2 is under attack. c4, as you pointed out correctly, the knight comes to f4. That's a great square for the piece. I like black's position.
Interesting. So despite being a pawn down, you think the attack black has more than makes up for it. And also you're taking the time situation into account.
No, I wasn't. I was just looking at the board and thinking that c2 is going to fall, and I like the activity, but this time situation does give Alireza some pretty good hope, but I just think that black's way too active here.
At what point is h4, h3 really scary for black? We can't play it yet because the queen is protecting on h4. Is the white queen going to be tied to protecting that spot?
Yeah. And I just also don't know what let's say you make some, I don't even know what move, like queen b, queen somewhere, and I take this way, and we get in this end game. You're actually losing your a pawn, and then black's just up a pawn. So there's so many threats here. Queen h4. Okay, it gives you a check on d8, but that's just one check because you can always run to h7. So why not just steal a pawn?
I mean, I'm a pretty greedy pawn grabber myself. I would probably take it, and Meshkov seems to listen to Robert Hess, as you know, we all should. I feel like our lives would be a bit better if we always took Robert Hess's advice. But now Firouzja's in a tough situation. Bishop d4. So the pawn on a2 is hanging here, and I don't see any direct threat from white. I think he just had to move his bishop away from the threat.
Yep. So bishop d4. I'm assuming he's also thinking about rook c4, just pinning, but then the queen comes back to f2. So rook a2. Is white going to play, like g4 looks way too risky. I understand you're trying to come for the g7 pawn, but queen d3 there, hitting f3, nah, not realistic. Rook c4 though. If queen f2, there's knight f4. Finally, that knight gets in.
There we go, some knight activity. But can't we kick the knight out pretty easily with bishop e3? I guess there's knight e3, but it doesn't have a lot of hope from there.
Rook c2 to get the knight to e2. Like you're just inching your way forward.
Yeah.
And Meshkov's impressive game, I would say, in this one. From a position that we both initially liked white's position slightly to get here, which at least to me looks very nice for black. No real
Certainly.
risk. So what can we do? Knight e3 comes to mind. Rook back. Rook back to c2 comes to mind. Even a queen f5 type of move. f6. Your king's not weak anymore. Cut off the bishop. Where does the bishop go? You go to g3 of h4 with tempo. Bishop d6.
So black's immediate threat here is rook c2, putting pressure on a2, and the knight preparing to come to e3. I mean, at this point, Firouzja should be pretty happy with the draw. So he's going for a4. He's protecting the pawn, pretty aggressive. I mean, he still has a passed pawn. Now, if bishop g3, h4, just deadly.
Whoa, queen e7. So is he hoping for some kind of like knight g2? There's a pin down the g file, and also queen e4 comes to mind. They're just trying to trade the queens off, and then go after, try to promote this pawn. The bishop on d6 protects the h2 pawn, things like that. So, I mean, I don't know how real it is, but it's a good attempt by Firouzja.
Yeah, certainly is. He's trying to find his best chances for a draw here, and that's a really important skill to have. When you realize you're in a worse position like this, just try to make the best out of it.
Yeah, so queen e7. What else can we? Knight f5. All right. There are some ideas where if this bishop were to leave the diagonal here, like if I play h4, I'll just show this, like bishop a3. There's sometimes where you can get away with some kind of knight g3 check, but your queen would have to be here, and this queen would have to be somewhere like this, where like points you blast open the h file.
And you're just checkmating because white's king has no space. Yeah, exactly.
But so many things would have to go right.
For that to happen, you're right. The circumstance would have to be perfect. So, I mean, black is not interested in trading off pieces here. He's using the knight to help the deadly attack against the white king. h4 right away. It's a move he was going to do regardless.
Yep.
And his pieces are all protected, so might as well go for it now. If white continues with a5 and says, okay, I'm just going to keep pushing my pawn, as he just did, is h3 the threat, or is he holding off from pushing the pawn?
He's going to hold off for the time being, just because those queen h5 type of lines are pretty interesting.
So he wants to just allow for the opportunity to sack with knight g3.
Yeah. And now his rook has access to the a4 square. From the second rank, the queen covered the a2 square, so the rook wasn't able to get behind the pawn. Now it is able to get behind the pawn, but the pawn is really advanced. You let that pawn get to a square like a7, you're not going to be a happy camper whatsoever.
That's true. And so knight g3 still doesn't work here now because the pawn is the square is double protected and the queen isn't on h5 yet. So rook a4 is kind of a safe move given that he only has 20
Knight
seconds.
g3? Knight g... Oh, you can take with the bishop. I forgot
Yeah.
the bishop was there.
Yeah.
But I was like, if you take with a pawn, I take this way, threatening rook h4 check and these kind of checks.
But if we go back, I mean, Meshkov is getting into the serious time pressure now. This is what we said earlier might give Firouzja that chance despite the really difficult to play position. Ooh.
Can I just push? Just
Push and take with the rook because you don't have rook takes d1. Sorry, you don't have rook d1 check because it's protected by the queen.
All right, we get this position now. And rook a4 is possible. And that would be...
Because then it would be a perpetual after queen takes up.
It was rook b4 first, but rook a4 takes, check. Yeah. Rook g2, check, check,
yep.
and so on with a draw. But he goes rook b4, same exact premise. But the difference, there has to be a difference. Queen comes back to e2. Now he's going to rook a4. Okay. But I like this queen on e2 way more than I did on b3. Feels like this is coming to safeguard the white king.
Right. Maybe the best move here is just to use the bishop, protect the pawn, hold it for now because there's no serious threat against white anymore. And then even ideas like queen c2. Well, if the queen isn't attacking the pawn on f3 or queen g2.
Right. The bishop b6, something like this. Queen h3, there's queen g2, offering a change of queens. Or
yeah.
So it's played.
Okay.
So queen g2, I wonder if he'll just retreat his queen. The knight is so well placed protecting the g7. He takes it.
That seems strange. So now the material is going to be equal. Knight c8 is the idea here to attack the bishop and the pawn at the same time. But rook c1 and
yeah, I guess.
I mean, at least Firouzja got a draw here. It looked extremely dangerous.
Yeah, no, this seems to be just clear liquidation, and Firouzja, in no small part, thanks to his quick play. He's been moving very quickly throughout this game, up almost 5 minutes in the clock. This will help him survive this one. I don't see a way where he can play for more here. Knight c8 is unstoppable, hitting both the bishop and the a7 pawn. So I do believe that they can just shake hands soon. And he was rook d1. I guess rook d7. I take the bishop. Is he still trying to play for a win?
I mean, he's using the time advantage to say bishop f8. He's going to win the g7 pawn. Oh, shoot. Yeah, that's a good call.
So he blundered, actually. He thought that he had his bishop f8 idea. Now he has to, hold this game all over again, essentially. But
I can't tell if it's a good call. So your opponent has under 10 seconds, but it's increment. Should you try to force? I mean, they're already up by such a high margin that a draw isn't... Oh. Uh-oh, now you're going to have h5 and h6 coming.
Yep. It's looking a bit scarier. It should be totally fine for black, although now h6 is... Uh-oh.
I don't know if it's totally fine anymore because we don't have rook a7 anymore.
Nope.
What are we going to do about the g-pawn? The king has to go back to g4 so he doesn't get checked if he goes king e6. There was rook e5.
Knight d5, something like this. You have to play rook takes g7 to check. King goes to h8. The bishop will just come back, I believe.
I'm a fan of the fact that he played for a win here. I mean, the Chessbrahs are already up a lot, and he's making the game really exciting.
He is. I do believe black is holding this position, but it's not easy, especially with 2, 3, now 5 seconds left. Gave a check, inviting the king in. Right, you're inviting the king on a little bit of a journey, but perhaps he's going to win this f3 pawn and check the king from behind.
Right.
Essentially, I always ask this question: what are the dream squares? How do we make this work? Even if the king were on g6, you would still need to move your rook away.
Yeah, if the king was on g6, your pawn's on h7, then rook g8, but you just don't have the moves for those ideal squares.
Yep. So knight h5 check. Oh, he's made that with 1.7 seconds left.
Getting really close. We're getting down to the wire. Chat, let us know what you think the result is going to be. You got to make a prediction soon because the clock's ticking.
Nice move, knight g3. Bishop d4 was the idea, but knight f5 check. And the king, ooh, 2 seconds left when he made that.
Bishop
move.
d4?
Knight e2 check. It keeps having these little sneaky
knight attacks.
Yeah, knights are so tricky. I would even think about king g4 here with the threat of king to h3. Because after king g4, like, where are you going to move your knight? And also it's a move that just causes you to freak out.
Right.
Like, oh, wait, what?
No, that's an interesting idea. There's also bishop c5 with maybe bishop e7 or bishop f8. That's somewhat interesting.
Look at me.
Oh, guess the move. Robert, and back at it again, you guys.
He almost lost on time. He gets that move off with 1 second remaining, but king f5 is making progress, inching forward. bishop e3 now to protect this pawn on h6.
Yep, the only best way to do it, because king g6 falls to check.
But then
right?
this, and I have king g5 hitting both pieces. So like all of these lines, here it comes.
Oh no! Oh no!
1-0 on time. He lost on time. Firouzja gets the victory.
Oh my gosh!
He earned it.
What a brute force way to win. He used everything to his advantage. See, the time situation we talked about is just so important in these rapid games. Nicely done, Firouzja. Holy smokes.
I mean, this move, king g4, just really such a nice move, because king h3 is actually a deadly threat, because the rook cannot stay protecting the knight. The bishop covers the g1 square. He gives a check. Here comes the king. He tries to hit the pawn. Wait a sec. Now there's a mate threat. I'm giving you a check, but now you can't take on h6 because there's king g5 with a fork here.
So tough.
Yeah. Well done by Alireza. And well done by Anish Giri. Grandelicious. Niels Grandelius beats Alexandra Grishuk.
Wow. Well, that's a much needed victory for the Sweden Wasabis, even for their morale. They might be already lost, but very nice finishing fork there. So did Grishuk blunder into this? Or since I guess all the games.
And Hellers won on time? Okay, but he also won by position. Yeah, but it says won by time. And I was shocked because usually it's Hellers, who's lost in time in some positions past, but he's delivering a million different checkmates here.
Even Saric looks shocked while Hellers is, getting up with a nice red curtain in the back there.
Well, there was a good win for the Sweden Wasabis. They've cut their deficit to 8-4. It means the Chessbrahs need half a point out of the final 4 games, which I do believe they will secure. But congratulations to Ferdinand Hellers. I mean, this final position looks totally brutal, and Sweden needs every single point they can get.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll be back to see if they get it after a short break.
premium membership at Chess.com will help you improve your game with full access to a powerful set of learning tools. Unlimited tactics let you practice like a master, with more than 50,000 puzzles to challenge you at every level. Our library of interactive chess lessons, created by master coaches, will enhance every aspect of your game. And after each game you play, the computer analysis feature will give you feedback on every move you played, turning every game into a chance to learn. And that's not all. Premium benefits also include unlimited tournaments, video lessons, the Opening Explorer, and much, much more. Upgrade now to take your game to the next level.
And we're going to take a look at our bracket here. Of course, India Yogis defeated the Norway Gnomes earlier today. And right now, the Chessbrahs are half a point away from securing match victory against the Sweden Wasabis. If and when they do get that half point, they move on to face the winner of Chicago and Russia. Alexandra, going to put you on the spot once more. Chicago or Russia, who do you have in that matchup?
Well, the Russian Wizards are definitely favorites going in. Chicago Wind were able to make it by being the 5th best placing team, so that was a special rule that allowed them to play. Still, I mean, it's going to be an interesting match, and I always love to see upsets. One of our daily questions was, what is going to be one of the most surprising results in the playoffs? So maybe it could be the Chicago Winds versus the Russia Wizards.
Yeah, it would be an interesting one to see unfold. And, well, Yana Pomnishi is playing for the Russia Wizards. So not only do we have candidate participants in Alexander Grishuk playing, we had, who else do we have? We had another, Anish Giri, same team. I'm like, wait, what? I'm thinking about other teams. No, they have 2 candidates on one team.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Yana Pomnishi for the Wizards. So it's a really star-studded lineups.
Yeah, I'm excited to see those. And Anish Giri and Firouzja are having a really strong match so far. They both have 3 out of 3 with a perfect score. Even Saric hasn't had his best match yet. He's scoring half a point, but so is the 4th board of the Sweden Wasabis. Going into the round, Robert predicted it would end with 11-5. Let's see if he's going to be correct, or if the Sweden Wasabis are going to do the biggest comeback of the season.
You know how you asked me in the last match if you're playing black on board 1 or whatever?
Yeah.
What do you, here you have to go all in. Like, no matter, a draw is a loss. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So for the, but also they're so outrated. Like, I just don't know.
It's so tough.
I'm rooting for them, honestly. As a commentator, I'm always unbiased, but like there is something cool about being the underdog that's also down on your luck.
Yeah, I mean, you're rooting for the interesting story. So I think as a commentator, that's the fair, unbiased way to see it.
And I'm going to say that, and there's going to be a draw in the first 3 minutes of the round. But there's the Sweden Wasabi watch party. Still plenty of people there excited about their team. I'm excited about the future of that because Sweden already had 3 players that were identically rated at 2683 heading into the season. And I do feel like this team in particular is showing great energy and team spirit, and they could pick up a free agent who would be very dedicated to them and help them secure some important establish them on some of the top boards. Because while Bassem Amin is great, Niels Grandelius is great and doing well today, you kind of need to have the super GM at the top.
Yeah, especially with the new league rules. If you want to stay competitive, you have to bring in that top talent. And that's one of the things that makes it so interesting for everyone watching. Like we see at the watch party with the Sweden Wasabis and the clapping, we get to see the top players performing and supporting their teams here.
Yep. And all right, we have this game here between Alexander Grishuk and Bassem Amin. We have the King's Indians, a Fianchetto, just with his bishop on G2. And white, for now, has 3 pawns on the 4th rank. Black has just 1 pawn on his own 4th rank. And if you take on D4, knight takes D4, you see the power of this bishop. It protects the pawn on E4. At some moment, white might expand with pawn at F4, claiming more space in the position. But knight G4 was played by Dr. Bassem. And where's this bishop going to go?
Well, we just saw bishop F5, so maybe we're going to see F6 to push the bishop away, especially if black is also planning to play F5 here, then it's just on the way. If he's not planning to play F5, then you don't want to put a pawn on the F6 square and block your own dark squared bishop like that.
That's very true. So this bishop probably is going to retreat somewhere like C1 even, or D2, because it looks weird to place your bishop back at home, but this bishop on g7 is worse off for having played f6 and kick your knight away with an h3 move. He played bishop c1. Guess the move. Everybody should be guessing the move, right? This is the last opportunity to guess the move. I see have 9-9 there. I see a GM guessing some moves as well. So people trying to win that $50 prize.
Well, good. It's a great way to learn as well and put yourself in the position of these players. It's one thing to watch and enjoy, but if you're trying to improve your chess, put your moves on the board as well and try to pretend you're playing. So we see f5. Can white put the bishop back on g5? Maybe it doesn't make sense anymore because then the knight can just retreat on f6.
But it is an option. It's one that can kind of discombobulate black's pieces. A move like h3 is possible as well. You can consider taking on e5. So there's several captures available to white now. And, well, I mean, what do we make of this position? When the position below is open, right? Like, let's say I take on e5 and you take back with the pawn.
Right.
And they take an f5 and take back with the g-pawn. You see a dynamic with an asymmetric pawn structure. And this is not happening at all because we just have d5 played at the beginning of this. But it's an asymmetric pawn structure where it's all about piece play. And black can play e4, plug a knight into e5, try to gain some more space in the center and put pressure on the king side. And for white, you say, well, I have the d file under my control. Maybe your move bishop g5 that you mentioned earlier is good just to finish your development, play queen d2 or rook d1 and take over some squares. But I think those kind of transitions generally are good for black, relatively speaking. And that's why I said, hey, you're not going to be good here.
Right, and this is something you often see in the King's Indian defense. Black ends up getting a huge kingside attack, but he does get that bishop on g7 stuck behind its own pawns in these positions where he has f5, f4 coming. Knight c5 is played, putting pressure on e4. I don't even know if white has to protect it because that doubled pawn on e4 would be really easy to recapture. After you move the knight on f3, you'd attack it twice with the bishop and the knight. He decides to play h3 anyway, so he's kicking the knight back, most likely on the f6 square.
Mm-hmm. You can, like you said, you can take on e4, but there might be some kind of knight g5 getting this pawn back in this manner. But then you have to consider, is e3 a possibility? There are like tactics available that aren't in many other similar looking positions. And the point of e3 is cutting off the bishop from the knight on g5. So you take on g4, I take on g5. You could take e3, and it's like, oh, I take g4. Like, oh, but I take c6. So we're getting down this a rabbit hole variation where I do believe that white is very happy because once the position breaks open, the d6 pawn is weak. Even if you trade queens, my bishop protects the c6 square. Not good for black.
Right, and you see this pretty frequently whenever you got d6 and d6 push in these King's Indian positions. The d6 pawn is always going to end up being a weakness. It's just a matter of time for when white decides to open up the position here.
Yep.
Or go for ideas like b4 and c5, but that makes less sense here.
And you're a d4 player yourself, so like you're familiar with. Sometimes you're even down a pawn, but the structural elements are favorable for white. So that's why Wasabis eventually drops his knight back to f6, and you mentioned we can go knight g5 at some moment. Now there is actually an attack on this pawn e4. You have to do something about that. And knight g5, there might just be h6 because I have the e6 square firmly under my control. And then we have to consider b4. Like every single time you attack my knight, I attack yours. Who is this going to be advantageous for?
Yeah, at least that's one of the fun things about King's Indian. You get to see play on both sides. But speaking of both sides, I don't know if the Firouzja and Heller's game is going to have play for both because I see Heller's already down to 5 minutes on the clock. Firouzja is undefeated so far, so I'm really curious what's going on in that game. I mean, Firouzja's managed to win positions that have seemed drawish this entire match.
Yes, because of the clock management, and there's a pawn on d4 that's cemented on a dark square, and black already has two pieces attacking it. So black might want to play knight b5, opening up the a file. For instance, king g2, knight b5. Let's say we trade here. Now my rook has a nice open file to work with. And if you play rook a1 to challenge me, you've just removed your defender of the d4 pawn. I'll gladly scoop that off either with my knight or my bishop, because opposite colored bishops, I'll get into an endgame like that as black up a pawn very happily.
Yep.
So he went knight e8 to c7, knight b5, one of his options here. And black's pieces just seem more active. That's an attack on a d4 pawn. Where is white going to attack?
Right. I mean, even though white has the bishop pair here, I would even consider if it was possible somehow to just trade either of my bishops for the knight. That would be great, just because the coordination of knights in close positions and working together to put more pressure on d4 is going to be very difficult to counter against.
Yeah. And I'm guessing Heller's thinking about something like knight a4 to b6, but yeah, you get your knight to b6, and what do you really accomplish? You attack the rook on 8 that can just move, and your knight is sort of
Stuck on b6.
Yeah, it's gone too far in a sense. So I do worry about Heller's position as well as the clock situation. Bishop g4, trying to get rid of one of these knights by f5. The king comes into f7. I'm happy to push my pawn forward like that. Yeah.
Maybe we should check on the other Bra player with 3 out of 3, Mr. Anish Giri.
Okay.
See how he's doing against Niels, who is the top performer so far for the Sweden Wasabis with 2 out of 3 scoring half of their points in the entire matchup so far.
Yeah, it does have 2 of their 4 points, and right now with the black pieces, this pawn c5 is under attack. But in general, I like the vibe of this position because it's even material, 2 bishops for black. I like white's position, honestly, strong center, and it just seems that like there are no concrete weaknesses that black can exploit. But I just like that there are some imbalances, and you need a win. A draw is not helpful, so I think I like the attempt thus far.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. So if we're looking at this from white's point of view, he's the one who seems to have the attacking chances because his pawn has already been pushed all the way to h5. Would you consider something like king f2 and bringing your rook to the h file?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things to keep in mind. Black will try to open up the center. Right? If you're trying to attack me on the flank, I can try to open the center, and your king on f2 will be a little bit more vulnerable there. But I do think it's a worthwhile idea to think about. And what other ideas come to mind? Let's see. I can move my queen off the d file because I can't take on c5. Let's say knight c5, just bishop c5. I can't take back. My queen's hanging. And if I play d takes c5, I've opened up the situation for the rooks. So then we have rook d7, rook d8. Could be good for black, but also just queen here, knight b4. I'm not sure that I'm not getting away with this. Well, maybe Anish in the current position can even consider just d takes c5 and
Pawn grabbing at its finest.
you know, he is a chess bra. Yasser Seirawan's kind of a chess bra. They learn from each other. Not saying that Yasser's a second for Anish Giri for the candidates, but if he takes that pawn, maybe we have to start asking the important questions.
Then we're going to get some insight, that's for sure, Robert. Well, we haven't checked on Ivan Saric's game yet, so we can also take a look there if it seems interesting.
Yeah, let's do that. We're gonna
lead the way.
We're going to go to the Saric game because we haven't looked at all, and it's interesting here. White has tons and tons of space. Look at this pawn d5, pawn on e5, protected by other pawns.
I mean, they're looking like the best example of a strong pawn center here. Not to mention, if it was white's turn to move, he could take on d6. That pawn is pinned, it can't take back. So black has to immediately deal with that threat. Of course, in the future, say he were castle or something like that, as soon as the e-pawn takes on d6, all of a sudden the bishop on g7 is also a lot more free, looking towards the knight on c3, trying to see if he can maybe take queen a3, get some checkmating threats into play there, bringing his knight to a6 to b4.
Yeah, you would love to, like, if you got 2 moves at once, let's say go king b1, then castle, you're saying exactly what you're saying is true. If you take on d6, I'm super happy as black with a bishop on the long diagonal unopposed. They're a great piece. But you pointed out correctly that ed6 is possible because that pawn is pinned. The king, and queen d7 is actually a checkmate threat, and that's just devastating for black to deal with. So he goes knight to d7. I guess he's going to castle queen7, but this is, no, you can, not my style here. Take on e7 with the pawn. Hitting the rook, you go here. I think I can just go like knight b5 and then pawn f5 and try to get a check in here.
This looks really devastating here. So hey, I mean, this is going to be a point for Sweden Wasabi.
True, they need every single point from these games, and you got to start with 1, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And what can Bishop e1, protecting the knight on c3. If you take with the bishop, then your rook is lost on h8. Also a very good looking move. You're up 2 pawns as white.
And 2 passed pawns. One's already on the 7th rank. Once white takes care of any potential threats on the king side, then he's just cruising here. He can even push d6, just cement the pawns in there. Either go for simplifying or use the fact that black's king is not in the most comfortable position and go for an attack.
Yeah, this d6 move will be very annoying because now black is trying at least to get a rook over to the queen side, trying to at least pretend like there's an attack. It's not a legitimate attack. White is defended here. So you got to do something if you're Sarge. You're having a bad day. You're having a bad round. So might as well bring the rook into the action.
And d6 is played right away, protecting the pawn on e7, blocking the rook from coming to b6. Sarge goes for bishop d4. He's trying to, centralize his bishop here, maybe attack the pawn on d6. But after knight f3, I don't know if rook takes d6 is a great option.
Some kind of knight b5, hitting your queen, hitting your rook on d6.
Robert is not loving white's chances here. You can hear it in
No, I'm loving white's chances.
Sorry, I meant black's chances.
No, you're exactly right. I'm not liking black's chances at all. It's just feels like everything that can go wrong is going wrong. And I'm up 2 pawns. One of them's on the 7th rank. You're all tied down. I think we have to, for my sake, say goodbye to Ivan Sarge's position.
That seems fair. Where to, Robert?
Let's go to the Heller's game against Firouzja because we're in an endgame now where black can claim an extra pawn. And now this pawn at c5 is also going to be lost. So it's 2 extra pawns.
Right. There's nothing white can do to defend the c pawn here. There's no counterplay you can create. Firouzja's just going to be up 2 extra pass pawns. And he is going to get 4 out of 4. Also, just a moment of respect for Firouzja's speed. He has almost 9 minutes on the clock to under a minute. And we've seen this time and time again. We got to slow down the kids, Robert. They're coming for the older players.
You're right, though, to point that out, that it's just been really impressive performance for Alireza Firouzja. We expect him to play good moves, but in some of the games, it's been looking like his opponents are holding him off, fending off any sort of winning chance he has, and then he's up on time, pressing them in their time trouble. And this game is up 2 pawns, so he should be good, but against Grandelius and also against Meshkov's that he also had that.
Yeah, and against Meshkov where we thought he was worse, then we thought he was drawing, and then he pushed for it down a pawn just because of the time and situation.
So, yeah, he's going to spend his time here just to convert this, but all he needs is a draw for the team, and he'll win the game.
Certainly.
To make it 11-5. That's why.
That is what you predicted.
It is what I predicted, and we'll have to keep looking at the other games to make these predictions happen because the Basem Amin Grishuk game is one where a nice move has just been played in rook c6. You can't take me without opening up this diagonal.
Right.
You can't take me still.
Oh, wow, because there's no way to block the check with the queen, so you're just losing the queen on d7 here.
And he's like, you can go take this. Go for it. But you still lose because of bishop d5.
So many Botez gambits in this situation. I love to see them when they're not actually happening on the board or in my games.
Exactly, right? When you're not the one blundering your queen, you're much happier.
Exactly. But now the rook on c6 is under attack, so he moved his king out of the way. I almost wonder if he can just play rook c1 and let him take.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems a little unnecessary.
Hey, not your pieces. And Alireza Firouzja has officially won his game, so that means that the Chessbrahs have secured the match. Now they're up 9-4.
All right, so they've secured the match. We're still curious what the final score is going to be. Chad, if you have any predictions, now's the time to make it. It's always fun to see how close you are. All right, so he did leave his rook there.
Yep.
And Amin decided not to take it just because that pass pawn was going to be too dangerous.
Yeah, that's it. And then you put the bishop on d5. You can also b5. The rooks need open space to be good.
Mm-hmm.
They would be tied down defending against that pawn. So he goes for this variation instead, where one pair of rooks have been traded. I think the second pair will also be traded. Black looks okay to me here. Just because even material, this bishop on g7 is pretty strong. The bishop on b5 can sit on d3 as needed. I don't know what white's plan exactly is, but I think that black is pretty safe.
I think that's a fair point. Now that the rooks are being traded, white is putting pressure on d6, but that's an easy pawn to protect. I mean, can use his queen, his bishop, and I've just queen 7 exactly, and the bishop on g7 is controlling the long diagonal, so there's no checks there. I mean, the pawn on f5 also looks a little bit weak. It's just with the two bishops, they're controlling most of the openings. But white tried to go for something like queen d1, queen h5, try to loop around onto the king side. Even so, once you get there, I don't see where you're going to be attacking because the black queen is also close to protect everything.
Yeah, it's a good idea, right? To just try to flip the queen over and get some activity, but there are relatively few targets and relatively few pieces remaining for white. And so to team up on the pawn, would you play h4? Like, would you go h4, bishop h3 after the f5 pawn? Perhaps. Seems like a reasonable idea, especially tied with your queen d1, queen h5. After bishop d4, I know you want to go after my pawn. I like your queen d1 idea. I was just saying, hey, you're not getting f2, and my queen might just hop back into the king side.
Right. Well, it looks like he's going for it anyways. I mean, white has to come up with some moves. Queen c4, and yeah, I was going to ask, is bishop f1, and then you can trade the bishop.
Yes.
And
great question.
Get the pawn on d6.
Oop. Yeah, that's an annoying situation for black to deal with, because I can't play bishop e5 as my pawn just runs free, queen. And if I can't play bishop e5, I'm just losing my pawn. So bishop d3 played instead. Okay.
I mean,
you can take d6 if you want it.
Yeah, d6 is hanging, and what is black's immediate response after bishop takes d6? Is it queen d7?
Yeah, I like
and
that.
Then bishop's got nowhere to go. That protects 5.
You can try like some weird move with bishop b8, but normally you could take on d3 because the pawn is pinned, but you can't here because bishop f check.
Yeah.
And then I take my queen. Can't get away with all the tactics. Queen d7 played. I like it.
Well, the board ones are having a really tough time in matches today.
Yeah, they are.
Grishuk, Hare Krishna,
Bassem Amin, Johann Sebastian Christensen got 2 points. So
yep.
The board ones really, that might be a surprise of the playoffs.
There we go. We're getting some answers. Something that we didn't predict here.
Yeah, it is surprising that the board ones collectively, from all 4 teams, have a minus score, and a big minus score.
Right. Okay, queen h5. Black king is definitely pretty exposed in this situation. If the bishop was on h6, then this would look a little bit more intimidating, although the queen can always hop back on g8 after any back rank checks.
Goes back with queen e6. The a2 pawn at some moment will need defense, because queen on e6 is good. It defends the e8 square from the check, but that is a pawn you need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it certainly is. Grishuk has 30 seconds to a minute and a half. He knows that his team is winning already, so one thing he can do is just play somewhat safer moves. a3. Do you think he's trying to push for a win here, or he's just playing it as a team player?
Yeah, I think both players are kind of just like testing the other, see what they have in store. But Grishuk, okay, well, after queen g6, you can take it and then try to just call for a draw. But the queenside pawns are somewhat vulnerable for white. So I'm starting to like black's position more and more. He's just gaining space.
Yeah, he's gaining space, and his king is still safe for now. But if Grishuk manages to trade off, then I guess it's going to be a different story. I'm also curious about, so Anish Giri just won his game.
Okay.
That's wait, so Anish Giri is 4 out of 4 as well.
Yeah.
Wow, we got some top scorers today, and a little bit of struggling on the two ends.
Yeah, we can keep these players on camera. Just flash the game here. Checkmate on the board for Giri. The last couple moves, he just had an attack. Opposite colored bishops are good when you're the one with the attack, because this king is falling victim to all these dark squares here, and that's exactly what happened. He went rook c8, a beautiful tactical move. You take the rook on c8, which is essentially what happened. there's checkmate on g7. If you don't take the rook on c8, the rook's coming here. And Firouzja won. We mentioned that earlier. It appears that Ivan Sarch somehow won his game. So
What?
Nikita Meshkov just had the
way.
worst day possible.
How is it possible to lose that game? He was up 2 pawns.
Let's go back to where it happened. So he went knight f3. He took here, went f5, like pushed all his pieces forward. Ooh, he didn't want to make a draw with like king c1 back, and he just lost the knight because the rook on d1 is not protected.
Yeah. So I guess he was just trying to force because he realized his team couldn't win. Although he couldn't have realized his team was going to win because Firouzja had already lost. So a blunder there.
Yeah, just a bad day.
Well,
That's very
10-4.
bad.
This is very close to your initial prediction. Although it seems like it's going to be a draw, but 10.5, 4.5.
It's 11-4 right now, I believe, because that
True. Okay, so you
Sweden,
got it.
Bassem, I mean, you need to win this game to make my prediction come true.
Yes.
But no, he's not going to win.
Nah, it's going to be a draw.
Yeah. And actually, if we go back a moment, this is really tricky. It looks like bishop b2 wins a pawn, but I have king c2 because if you take, I go king b3 and your bishop's trapped.
Got it.
So it's funny just to note that you're not winning pawns. They agree to a draw by repetition, by just moving the king back and forth as well with the bishop. So when all is said and done, the Chessbrahs demolish the Sweden Wasabis.
That was a little bit hard to watch as the Sweden Wasabis got steamrolled here, but we will be back with an interview. I don't know if we want to tell you who or keep it a secret, but it's going to be someone from the Chessbrahs. So there you go. Some middle ground there. We're also going to announce the winner of Guess the Move. So you want to stick around and congratulate it, whoever it is, or see if it was yourself.
And we are back with special guest, that is Grandmaster Anish Giri. Anish, first and foremost, congratulations on your personal performance and also to your team.
Thank you. Thank you. I haven't quite figured out still how this complicated system works, but I assume winning a match is a good thing.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like you figured out 4-0, pretty bad score, could have done better. How do you assess your play from today?
Yeah, we had, first of all, a tremendously strong team. We got, the Canadian Alexandra on board, and also Ali Reza, who wins all the games as well. So there was not much pressure on me. But yeah, I was very happy. I think I've played a lot of Blitz in the last few days, and I can tell that today was an incredible day because I haven't played this well in a long time.
When we see such incredible performances from the Chessbrahs, we imagine that you guys have pretty good chances to make it in the final four. How do you see a matchup between the Chessbrahs and St. Louis looking like?
Yeah, I think if we got Grishuk and Ali Reza, we're doing very well. But I think a lot depends on the board four, both in our team and the St. Louis, because today we had Ivan Saric, who's a very, very good player. But he is of course a level under Firouzja, for example, who is just a tremendous blitz player. And the same in St. Louis, they've got these guys like Fabiano and and two more top players, but then their board four sometimes can be a little intimidated by all the great teammates. So I think it's hard to say who is the favorite, especially because I think the top three boards are potentially very, very, just very best blitz players out there. And depends who shows up for the fourth board of St. Louis.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And Anish, you're very busy preparing for the Candace as well as your teammate, Alexandra Grishuk.
No, I'm actually done, so I'm not busy anymore.
You're done?
I'm done. I'm done. All openings have been refuted. Everything's done. I'm done.
Well, I'm happy for you. And I was going to ask, now that everything's refuted, how did you go about preparing for this match? You have so many different things going on in your brain, I'm sure, because of the upcoming challenge. But did you make some time to prepare for the Wasabis? They are a pretty tough team.
No, but you can't imagine how much stuff that you look at. During a serious preparation, you deem sort of to be somewhat second rate. Then by now I've got like 3, 4, 5 bonus repertoires that I can play. So in that sense, I think I'm very well prepared for the Blitz and event like today. And the openings have been doing. I've been doing very well today in the opening, in both white games. I think I've got a pretty big advantage in the opening, and I didn't even have to show very much. Just played the pretty much the existing theory, and with the black pieces, I got fighting positions in both games. So I think to be honest, today the only game I prepared for, I was briefly bored before playing round 2 because the break was a bit too long for my taste. So I looked up my opponent's games and actually I even prepared, and it all worked out very well. So.
It's funny. I was going to ask you if you were worried about like playing something that you didn't want to play because you're saving up some of your repertoire, of course. Did you have any concern that you would do that?
No, as I said, there are like far too many things we looked at and so many different ideas that are, that I'm not really, I cannot play them all in candidates, and some of them are a little bit, a little bit more dubious than others. So I thought I'm more than well prepared for today. I think I talked out well.
So do you tailor any of your openings for the rapid format versus playing for time control?
Yeah, sometimes, depending on what my opponents play. In particular, for bullet, it makes a very big difference. There are certain structures that I think I cannot play in bullet because then when I pre-move, I lose pieces and stuff. Like the other day, I played some Scheveningen structure, this E6, D6 pawns in the Sicilian. And there somehow, whatever comes on the king side just mates me outright in a bullet game. But in this rapid 10 plus 2 or something we played today, I think it didn't matter that much. I think I just play my main stuff and it works fine.
Yeah, I'm done with the serious questions. I'm going to start asking you just totally random questions because, follow you on Instagram, as I'm sure many people watching do. And it seems like you're like playing football, eating ice cream, going to the movies. What's the best movie you've seen during your preparation?
Well, let me explain first of all that my sponsors and supporters don't think I'm wasting all resources on the ice cream and football. Well, I mean, there is nothing to take picture of during the hard work, which is like, I don't know, 9 hours a day. And in that spare half hour, 1 hour, when I'm, eating ice cream or playing football, then I'm taking a picture. So then it looks from my Instagram that all I do is eat ice cream and play football. Just slightly misleading because, we looked at a lot of chess, but you're not going to send a screenshot of your latest ideas, in the night or so.
Yeah, that's already happened before, right? So we don't need a second coming of that.
Yes. Yeah, so exactly, yes. But yeah, the ice cream was eaten, football was played, a movie. There was a funny incident. We wanted to go for some fun movie. I think the plan was to go for these Bad Boys for Life. Sounded like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But then we're still not sure whether my head coach, Erin Lamy, sabotaged us or it was done not on purpose. But somehow the moment we entered the cinema, they said the only movie right now is 1917, which she wanted to watch all along. Very serious, heavy film about the First World War and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So he wanted to do that all along. We finally voted him out of it. And then we come to the cinema, which he claimed, now would be this Bad Boys for Life. And then they said, well, all we've got is 1917. So we don't know whether it was planned or not, but the movie we ended up watching was 1917. Otherwise, we didn't see much movies, mostly football, because one of my seconds has a disliking for movies, which I think nobody has. But apparently there is this one person. That gives everything away because everybody who knows him now know that it's him because there's only one person in the world who dislikes movies. And I think that's one of my secret seconds. And we have to wait till he leaves the camp till we visit finally one movie.
I used to be a fan of yours, but now that you said you work with somebody who doesn't like movies, I think it's all over.
No, but I never knew that. Had I known it, I might have not contacted the guy at all. But middle in the training session, he was having all these great opening ideas, and he seemed to be a nice guy. And then suddenly he says, we say, let's go to a movie. Everybody's always thrilled. I have vast experience of training chess. All my training camps, all my seconds have always been happy to go to a movie. And suddenly the guy says like, well, I'm going to stay at home. I'm like, why? I don't like watching movies. And I was like,
yeah, you can't any of his ideas.
Yeah, I already paid him the money. He was already there. No way out of it anymore.
Oh,
well, it's good to know that you take into account somebody's personality when considering them for your second. I guess
yes, definitely. That's why Robert Hess is not part of my team.
You stole my punch.
Oh my god!
No, you set it up for me, right? It was.
If it was just based on personality, I think I would have a decent chance of making Anish's team. But
it was a joke. It was a joke, obviously. If it would be on personality, you would have made it. But it's actually how serious chess works.
Wow!
You managed to diss us both in that 1 second.
Yeah, you set it up for me as well. I don't know.
For him and alley-oop, he went full Zion Williamson all over me. So. Well, Anish, it's really been a pleasure to have you. Congratulations again on a great showing. And, we hope to see more of the Chessbrahs. And, of course, we'll see you soon in the candidates.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anish. Well, it's always a fun interview with Anish Giri, one of my favorite people. He loves to, jab you right where it hurts, but not enough that you dislike him. So thank you again to Anish Giri for joining us. And we do have the updated bracket. The Chessbrahs move in there. We'll face the winner of the Wind and the Wizards.
Yep. And continuing on Wednesday, we're going to have the France Roosters and the New York Marshalls, as well as the China Pandas versus the California Unicorns. So we got a ton of playoff games this week to see who get one step closer to who's going to make the Final Four.
Absolutely. And if I had to give my final thoughts of today's action, I thought that India and Norway, it became a toss-up. I would have had India pegged as the favorites beforehand. And Hans Niemann blunder in the final game cost the Norway Gnomes match. It shouldn't all be on him. He was doing so well to that moment, but unfortunately, that one slipped away from them. They have their hands more than full with the Archbishops. Anish Giri said it himself. It's like, honestly, it should be between the Chessbrahs and the Archbishops in a sense, because they have these 3 super GMs each, and then with another strong board 4. And we shouldn't leave without telling everybody where the money was made, because while Anish Giri will not pay me to work with him on chess, the top guesser for Niels Grandelius versus Alireza Firouzja was, who was it?
It was Chess_Clue with 21 out of 24 moves guessed correctly. He's winning the $50 prize. Also, congratulations to Spectre 93, 37 out of 59 moves. So he actually guessed more, but he wasn't a premium member, so he will now get Diamond membership for 3 months. Congratulations to the other top scorers as well.
21 out of 24 is insanely impressive.
That's true. That's true. He was probably just listening to you and inputting the moves.
Or just doing the captures, like quickly, like being like, oh, pawn takes pawn,
yeah,
and getting it right. But on a serious note, congratulations to all the winners. I mean, Chess_Clue, that's a really good performance. And Spectre 93, I recognize that name. Spectre 93 is everywhere. And no Tay of 9-9.
He was trying. I mean, he was 37 out of 61 on this reshook game, but he just hasn't managed to nail the correct game yet.
Well, the Chessbrahs have nailed their top game here. They, demolished. I couldn't even find the right word for what they did to the Sweden Wasabis, but I do want to give a special shout out to Sweden. They have a watch party every single week. They've been a pleasure to have in the 2020 Pro Chess League season. Unfortunately, their season is over, but the playoffs do continue. Alexandra, I've had a great time commentating alongside you.
I have as well, and we are going to pass over the fun to Grandmaster Christian Kirilla, Count Chess. He is going to provide a high energy stream as he always does. He's a Romanian Grandmaster, currently living in St. Louis and also training one of the local university teams. So stay tuned, show him some love, support more of the chess community on Twitch. Thanks everybody for being here.